last week we went over several using SQL connection and SQL commands, right, to be able to interact directly with the database. Let's build on those ideas again here. Next week we'll go a little bit more advanced, and instead of directly accessing the database using SQL, we'll use another technology called link and an entity framework, right, to do more or less the same thing, but at a higher level. All right. So, but today, for the foreseeable future, let's keep using direct SQL and the data access object design pattern. Okay. So let's create a table for developers that for primary key, we're going to use the username of these developers. Okay, so it's going to be a username, and it's going to be a varchar 50. Okay, and other things here might be perhaps the password. Let me write it here. I think it's easier if I write it over here. Password. It's also going to be a varchar, and we're going to have maybe here first name. And we're going to have here last name, varchar. Okay, and maybe an email. Okay, we have that. Let's remove this, and let's update. It'll create the table, update the database, and we'll see that in a little bit the table is listed here. There it is, developer with all the fields. Everybody okay? All right. Let's so what I want to have is a couple pages here. Let's create here under. Let's create a directory here for lectures, and call this a DAO. And in here, I want a page that will allow me to log in. Okay. So let's create a web form for login. Login.aspx. All right, let me put in here a directory for my CSS and a directory. Oh, that's it, CSS. And let me add drag in there. Can we verify that I'm actually broadcasting? You're not seeing it? Stop broadcasting. Stop. You're not seeing it, huh? If I put it in Piazza, can you check if it's there? It is broadcasting. It is? You see it? Okay. Can you verify? I'm sorry? The YouTube homepage is showing? Okay. All right, so I'm going to add here Bootstrap. And Bootstrap, I believe I have it here in downloads somewhere here. Bootstrap, there it is. Where is it? Name is anywhere here? I thought I had Bootstrap in here. Bootstrap, there it is. I'm going to just copy everything here. I'll move it over in here. There it is. So I'll create a link here. I call this the login page, and this will be my CSS, my link. This will be href. It will be inside of my CSS directory, and under there I have Bootstrap, bootstrap.css. Thank you. Rel. Sheet. There we go. And in here, I'll say class container, and I want here h1 login, and let's see if that works. All right, so login is there, but Bootstrap doesn't seem to have loaded. Login CSS bootstrap.css. Did I misspell it? Boost. Oh. Bootstrap. There we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry, English is not my first language. All right, so let's have a couple of things here. We want ASP text box in here, right? And this is going to be my login username, right? Run at server. Okay. And they're going to have another ASP text box, also ID for this is going to be my login password, run at server. What else do we want here? Maybe a button for us to actually log in, right? So a button, and this is going to be ID login button, run at server. Okay, and the text that we want for this is login, right? So let's refresh this. It looks ugly, so we can paint it real quick using Bootstrap by saying that for this I want a form control, and for both of these I want a form control, right? Yeah, I have form control there, and for the button I might want something like you know, I want a beat button and button primary, right? Plus maybe we can call it button block so that it takes up the entire page, so it starts looking like something I could hold in my hand, right? Right. So this is right. It's responsive. It's small. This would look okay in a phone screen. Okay. This would look okay on a mobile page. Maybe I want to put some placeholder to give an idea of what is that I'm expecting there. And so here I would say password. So there it is. So username and password for me to log in. Yes. But if I'm not, if I'm not in the system yet, I might want an additional button that is for registration, right? So login, register button, right? And the text that I would want there maybe is for to register. And again, this is not how you would actually create a registration. We're doing it something really, really simple that we could do in an hour and a half. Yes. Later on, we'll look at strategies for managing users using the .NET framework. Okay. From primary, we'll call here maybe success. So there it is. So I have register. And what I like to be able to do in the register is this probably should just be a plain old link, right? That would take me to the registration page, right? There's no logic that I need to run, right? It just should link me to a registration page, okay? So let's create real quick that link. Let's replace this instead of a button. This could very well be just a plain old anchor, right? So this could be maybe something that a regular anchor that goes to register.aspx, okay, with a class block, right? Oops. Oh my goodness, what happened? Ah! Let me see. A, and the text will be register. Register CSS class. Let's see. There we go. Register, right? And if I click on that, it'll go to a registration page. So this doesn't really need to be a button. It needs to be a button if I need to, you know, execute logic, right, on the back end. For instance, query the database to see if this user with his username and password exists. Then I'll leave it as a button, right? And also is I would create some kind of on click, right? That I would generate an event handler and would put it in the CS backend code behind page, right? Code behind code, right? That for us to implement a little later, right? And there it is. Notice that it opened up login aspx.cs. See that? And with the added method that was not there originally, with login button click, right? And here's where I would read the username, read the password, and see if the user actually exists. Yes. But let's not do that just yet. All right. Let's go to a registration page to actually create a user. Yes. Right. I don't have a registered ASPX, so let's create a page for that. right? And in DAO, let's create another page here, a web form, and call it register.aspx. There it is. I'm going to copy the bootstrap, right, from here. I'm going to steal it, and I'm going to put it there. And the title of this will be register, and the div will be class container, and h1 will be register, right? And for register, let's see, we need what? We need a username, a password verification, right? And a button to actually register, or even a cancel button where I should be able to go back to where I was, right? Let's see if this works. If I click on if I refresh this, if I click on register, it'll go to the registration page. So that works, right? That's trivial. I would like to have a back button. Let's create a back button that allows me to go back to my login page if I don't want to register. If I just happen to remember my username and password, I'll try that. So let's create here a link that just goes back to login, back, or cancel, or back. There it is, right? If I do that, it looks really ugly, right? But if I paint it a little bit with a class and say that this is a button, and this is a button, maybe danger, so it's red, then it looks like a back, right? So I can click on back, and it goes back to login, right? So now I have this small, easy navigation between these two. So register or back, register. So here I'm going to add a couple of input fields, right? And so it'll be ASP text box, and the text box will be, the ID will be register username, run at server, and the CS class will be form control. Right? And we need a couple of these. We need two more. One for the password. I'll call it register password, and I'll call this register password 2. Okay, and we'll verify that both of them are valid, right? And we'll put some placeholders, right, for the users to know what is it that we're expecting of them. Placeholder. This is for username. This is for password, and this is for password validation. Okay. There we go, right? And let's add a button for them to click and says, yes, that is what I want, register. So let's add a button here. Now, in this case, I do have to run some logic, right? I need to do some validation, make sure that the passwords match, that the username is not already there, right? And if everything goes okay, I need to actually insert the user into the database, right? So let's make it a button instead of a link so that I can run an event handler on the back end, right? And validate this, right? So I'll call this ID register button, and this is run at the server, and I'll have a handler, an on-click handler that says that will handle this, right? And I'm going to paint it as as button and button primary. Oops. Every time you create an on-click handler, right, it adds that method into the CS file, okay, and it opens it up as modified. See, it has an asterisk next to it. So you need to remember to save it. You need to save it. It's complaining, saying that such method is not in the code behind page, right? So let's refresh that. There it is. There's the button. I didn't add any text. Let's add some text to the register. Registration button. So I'll say text equal register. There it is. And I'll add a button block so that it takes up the entire screen of my phone. Okay? Everybody okay? All right. So we need to validate a couple things. And here I can type whatever I want. Notice that the passwords are clear text. So let's change that real quick. Here, the password, what I could do is I could use a text mode and say that I want this to be a password. Okay. Right. So now if I type the passwords, I can't see them. All right. In the registration, when I click on register button, it'll run whatever code I have here. Right. So here I need to grab the data that was submitted. Right. And done some validation, like for instance, username is required, and so on and so forth, right? So let's grab all that information from the front end, right? So we'll grab the username from the register username.text. Let's grab that from there. Oops, not text, text, right? And we'll grab the other ones, right? So let's grab password and grab password 2 from each one of these. So this is password 2, and this is password, password, that one, right? So one of the things that we would like to be able to do is check to see that if the username is not there, it's required. We want, now you would do this usually you would use JavaScript to do this, right? You would validate this on the client, right? Make sure that, why even accept, right, any data if there is no data, right? Why even bother the server for this? And we looked at some ideas on how to do that using Angular or jQuery, right? That we can. But over here, let's do it on the server. Remember that we said that we should validate often. Soon. We should validate as soon as possible. Validate often, meaning everywhere, right? And that meant everywhere, meaning the client on the middle tier. We're right now we're in the middle tier, right? And then validate on the server side, okay? On the database. I'm sorry, on the database. All right. So what we want to be able to do is say, well, what if username for some reason is empty, right? Or username is null. Well, that's not good, right? What we want to be able to do is somehow notify the user that that's unacceptable, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to go back to the page, right? And we're going to add a little label here that we're going to use for informing of error messages. Okay. Is that outside? What's going on? Are they playing? Is it a game? Huh? My God, sounds violent. Anyway, so registration error. So what we're going to do here is that if the username is null or empty, right? So we're going to notify the user saying that's unacceptable. So we'll say that registration error, registration text, right? We're going to say username is required. Okay, and then we're just going to return. We're not even going to continue. Right? We're going to stay in the same page. We're staying in the same page, right? So let's try that. So let's see. Let's remove everything, right? And let's say register. Oops. Let's refresh this. Register. Oh, there it is. Username is required, right? Perhaps we want to paint it. We can say CSS. We can say, we can say error, an error class. Okay, we can do an error class, and maybe we have a style or not a style. We would have what? We have a separate CSS file, yes, with the error class defined elsewhere, not in the page. But I'm lazy, right? I'm going to declare it here, and I want the color to be red. Okay. And so let's register. There it is. It's red. Okay. All right. So what else? What else can we validate? We can say, we can grab the username and password. The password we can say, right, if password is again same thing, blank, or password is null, then again we're gonna say something similar, right? We're gonna say, password is required. Password is required. Otherwise, the other case that we have to take care account is to make sure that password1 is equal to password2, right? So we'll say if password is not equal to password2, then we'll say passwords must be the same. So passwords must be the same. Correct? So I think all those are all the error messages. So if I provide a username, right, and now I didn't give a password, right? Or if I give a password, but I don't give the other one, they say, well, now they have to be the same, right? So I think those are all the use cases, right? There might be more, but you would put them there. If it's none of those, we made it through, right? Hopefully we made it through. Now we're ready to actually go and create the user. Well, not yet, right? We have to check to see if the user already exists, okay? Let's do it a little later. Let's first create the user, right? Let's be optimistic and assume that there are no developers yet. So let's create a user, right? All right. So as I said earlier, it's a good idea if I am going to be managing, if I have tables such as developer and applications and things like that, it's a good idea to have a C# class to represent each one of those records. Okay, to have just like there's a data model in the schema, in the relational model, right? I also want a data model on my C#N, right, in my object-oriented environment as well. Okay, and they should represent one another. They should. So let's create here in app code. Let's create a directory here. Oh, I can't. I have to stop this. Let's create a directory here, and okay, I'll put everything under here that's mine. And in here, we'll create here. There's a DAO example, right? And in here, I'm going to create a class to represent my developer, right? And in the developer, I'm going to have a couple of features here, a couple of attributes. Let's see, we have a username, right? So public username set, oops, username set, what? Public, oh, string set get. There we go. What else do we have? We have public string email set and get. We have public string. We have a lot of these, right? So let's copy that. Are you serious? There's a whole bunch of these, right? So I'm just going to copy them, a whole bunch of these. So we have, what do we have? We have first name, right? We have last name. What else do we have? Username, email, first name, last name. What? Password, thank you. Right, and let's put them in a particular order: username, password, email, first name, last name. Okay. And for convenience sake, I'll create a constructor that allows me to create a developer out of all these things, right? Where you can have a string username, string password, string, oh, I can't type, email, string first name, string last name. And we'll copy everything in here. So this username equal username. This email equal email. This password equal password. This first name equal first name. And this last name equal last name. Right? I think that's it. I think that's all we need for data modeling our developer, right? So let's close that. Now what we want is to have a data access object that will allow us to do the 4 basic CRUD operations, right? That will allow us to create a developer, delete a developer, update a developer, select a developer by username, by primary key, right? And perhaps another one that will allow you to list all the developers, right? Well, let's start by the ones we need. In the registration, we would like to be able to create a developer, yes? So let's create a data access object that allows us to create a developer, okay? So we'll create a class here. We'll add a class. And this is developer DAO. So in here, what I'd like to be able to do is, first of all, have a string that will represent the connection string, right? The connection string, and we can grab that from, if we go to the server and we click on that connection string, if we bring up the properties, right, and you'll notice that somewhere here this connection string, there it is. So if I click on that and select it and copy it over, right, I can paste it here. All right, there it is. That's my connection string, which I will use several times. Or we could grab it from the web config as well, right? We can grab it and name it in the web config, give it a name, right, and then grab it by name, right? But let's have it here. There's more, you know, bare bones, right? Okay, no magic here, no magic. Question? Yes? Yeah, the whole thing. Yep, the whole thing. Yep. So what we want to be able to do here is have a public void create developer that takes us an argument, a developer instance, right? And we'll create a connection here. We'll say SQL connection. Oh, it's not here, so we need to load it, right? We need to include it here, and it's in the it's in system.data.client. There it is. All right, so that library includes SQL connection. And there it is. Here's my connection, and it's going to be new SQL connection with the connection string, right? There it is, connection string. Right, we're going to open it up. We're going to open the connection. I'm going to close it. Right, make sure to don't forget to close it. Right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a SQL statement that will allow us to insert, right? Insert a developer with these fields, values, those values, right? So the fields here are what? I think it's username, password, what else? Email, first name, and last name, right? Correct? Right? And the values are going to be placeholders that are going to be parameterized, right? We're gonna feed this from the instance developer that we're sending as an argument. Yes, correct. So let's create a command, a SQL command that will allow us to query the database. So here's the command: new SQL command with the SQL and the connection. Right, and then we're gonna pass all those parameters. We got to create all those parameters. We'll create the username parameter, new SQL parameter with the username, and the value is from the developer username. We have a whole bunch of these, so let's copy this. There's 5 of them, right? So we have username, we have password. What else? We have email. We have first name, right? We have last name, correct? And these are what? These are password param. This is from the developer. From where? Password, right? Password, email, first name, and last name, right? And then we can just copy this over from here. It would be nice to have something that would do this for us generically. And that's what we're going to see next week. All right, there it is. So I have all my parameters. I need to add them to the query, to the command, right? So I have to say command dot get all the parameters dot add, right? And I'm going to add each one of these user parameters, and there's a whole bunch of these, right? So I'm going to just copy them. So I have user parameter, I have password parameter, I have email parameter, I have the first name parameter, we have the last name parameter, right? Okay, we're ready, and we're ready to actually execute the command, right? So we say command dot execute non-query, right? We're not retrieving any data from the database. We are pushing data to the database, right? So it's an update. So it's a non-query, right? So this is going to insert, hopefully, into a database, right? Okay, let's try it now. Let's go back here, and let's try here. Let's refresh this. Oh, actually, we actually have to use this data access object from the C# backend page, right? From the code behind page. We need that data access object. So let's create it here. We'll say here's the developer DAO. The one we just created it. There it is. And so from our button event handler, right? Our register button event handler. What we're going to do is that we're going to we have the username, we have the password. At least we have those two things, right? The username and the password. We don't have the first name, last name, email. We don't have that. Maybe it should be part of the registration page, right? But let's keep it like this. Right? So let's build a developer instance that we want to save. Yes. So here's a developer. Equal new developer. I do not have a well, actually, I'm sorry. I do have a username. I do have a password. I do not have an email, so I'm just going to say maybe blank. I don't have a first name, and I don't have a last name. Okay. Well, maybe these should be null, 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 and null. I don't know if that's going to get me in trouble with the database. Yes. Yes. No. The developer is the modeling class. The developer. I'm sorry? SQL instead of the. What do you mean? Yeah. Yeah. Well, the DAO is expecting an instance of a developer, right? Right. So here's my instance, and I'm about to send it over to my DAO. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to do DAO dot create developer. I'm going to pass the developer, right? So when it gets to the create developer, it will get the connection, right? It will do the insert, right? And they'll come back to this page. It won't leave the page. What is it? What is it? What? It's right here, right? When it goes into the create developer, right? In the create developer, it will create the connection. Right? No? Okay. So here it is. All right, so it's going to create it. Let's see if it works, right? I believe we have everything we need with DAO create developer. We pass the instance of the developer. Let's see. All right, so let's refresh this. Let's refresh this, and let's create Alice, password P1 and P1, create register, and it blows up. Let's see. What does it want? I'm sorry? Insert query is wrong? Oh, okay. Insert into, thank you. Into developer, blah, blah, blah. Username, password, email, first name, last name. Username, password, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's try that again. Parameterized query, blah, 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 blah. An unhandled system SQL, the parameterized query, password, blah, 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 which was not supplied. Oh, it looks like it's also complaining that we didn't supply. Well, let's try this again. All right, same error. It says that we're not supplying and varchar system SQL Server, the parameterized query, username, blah, blah, blah. Username, password, email. Oh, we're passing null. Insert into username, password, values, username, and the table's correct, right? Developer. Is that what I called it? That's correct, right? Command. I have the parameters. I add the parameters, right? I have all of them, right? Username, password, param. What else we have here? We have developer, username, password, email, first name. Let me just check and make sure it's not because I passed null here. Let's go back. P1, register. Oh, probably that's what it was. Let's see in the database if it made it into the database. Let's get the data from the developer. Get the table data. Yeah, so Alice and P1 made it in there, right? All right, so I'm registered presumably, right? Where should I go next? Presumably what I would have to go is to some kind of profile page because I just logged in, right? So let's real quick create a login page for us to reach, right? So we go to Solution Explorer, right? And we can create here a page for us to navigate to whenever we are able to register. So we'll have here like a profile page, profile.aspx, right? And in there, right, let's copy the Bootstrap CSS, right, in here so that it renders nicely. And let's name this profile, and we'll have here h1 profile. And here it'll be a class of container. Okay. So from what I want to do is that in your registration, right, if everything went okay, if the developer was able to be inserted, we just want to navigate to the profile page, right? We're done. We executed all our backend logic. We're ready to navigate, right? So what we're going to do that here is we're going to just redirect using the response redirect to our profile page, profile.aspx. Let's see. Let's create one more. Bob, P2, register. We navigate to the profile page. Everybody okay? So we have the navigation from the login to the registration to the profile, right? And let's see if in the database, did it make it into the database? I presume it did, right? Developer, I can get the table data, and we have both Alice and Bob in there. Okay, very good. All right, so again, what about if instead, if the user already exists? If they already exist, we need to know about it, right? We can't allow you to register with the same username. Okay, so let's do that. We have the data access object. We need to go find the user for that particular username and see if that username is already taken, right? If it's already taken, we won't let you register. We'll give you an error message. If it is not taken, then we'll let you continue. Make sense? Right? So we'll use let's go back to DAO, and we'd like to be able to find now a user by username to see if it's there. Right? If it returns null, then the username is not the username. It doesn't exist. If it does return an actual user object, that means that the user actually exists. Make sense? So let's do that. Let's create another here. Public developer find by username, and provides here a username. Right. So this is going to be very similar to the SQL connection. So I'm just going to copy a lot of this again because we're strapped for time. I'm going to just remove a couple of things here. Here's a connection. I open it. I do a select, right? In the query, it's just select star from developer where username is equal to username. Correct? Right? And here's my command. Here's the username. I don't have a password. I don't have an email, first name, last name. I don't have any of that. I add the username parameter to the command. Yes. I don't have any of these. Now it is a query, right? It's not a non-query. What I want to do is execute a reader, right? I want to do dot execute reader. And here we have a SQL data reader. There it is. Here's our reader. And what I want to do is check to see if reader.read, if this read was successful, that means that there was something to read, right? It would actually have to read the object inside, right? And read it in and return an object for it. Otherwise, if it doesn't find it, right, we're gonna return null. There is no developer with that username, right? If there is, I'm going to read it in, right? I'm going to read each one of these things. I'm going to read the username, from the reader, right? To string. I'm going to read the password. I'm just going to copy this. Right, so we have here, we're going to do the password, we're going to do the email, we're going to do the first name and the last name, right? And each one is the same, right? It's username, password, email, first name, and last name. Yes? Okay. And if I did find it, I'm going to instantiate the developer, right? So here's the developer that I did find that takes as our the password, the email, the first name, and the last name. I found it, and I'm going to return the developer. Developer. Okay? Otherwise, if I didn't find it, I'll return null. Make sense? So back in my CS, what I'm going to do is I'm going to query to see if there is a developer with that name. Yes? So I already have here a declaration of a developer. I'm just going to reuse that, right? I'm going to say developer equal DAO dot find by username. I have the username. Yes, right? I'm going to check. Right? If the developer is not null, that means that that username is taken. Right? I'm going to make an error message. I'm going to have an error message. I'm going to return. I'm going to say, you know, that user, that username already exists. Okay, and then I'm just going to return. Otherwise, if it is null, that means that user does not exist. Then I can do the insert. Make sense? Right. So if I go back to my registration page here, and I refresh this, oops. Developer. Oh, yeah, that's wrong, right? In my DAO, the username. Well, first of all, the username is something that is being passed as an argument, right? It's not part of an object. No, they're not passing as an object, right? They're passing as a username. And next, the username variable is already declared as a parameter, so I can't redeclare it. Let's try again. Reload. So I'm going to say Alice and the passwords. Oops. Registered. Okay, that username already exists, right? Or if I say Bob, username already exists. But if you do Charlie with P3 and P3, okay, it does work, and it sends me over, right? Actually, though, right before sending you over, one good idea would be to remember that it is you who's logged in. Remember we did last week. We're remembering who's logged in because other people could be looking at your profile. So we need to be able to distinguish between who's logged in and who's the owner of the profile, right? So it's a good idea to put it in your session. Remember that the logged in user is this developer, right? Is a developer. I guess logged in developer. How's that? Developer. Yes. Okay. Another good idea that we're using last week is that the profile we would pass as an argument, right? Actually, for this case, let's assume only one person, right? It's my profile and no one else can see my profile. It's just me. Right? Let's keep it simple so I could finish something by the end of the lecture. So I have the developer who's logged in. Back in the let's see, login should be very similar, right? In login, how would login work? Right. If I go back to login, the login would have to run some backend logic, right, to check if the username and password exists, right? So for instance, we would need in DAO, we would need something very similar to find by username, but it also checks by password, right? So let's copy this. Let's copy that, right? And let's enhance it so that it can check not only for the username, but by username and password, right? To see if that user exists. So use a string for username, use a string for password, and select developer where username is username and password is password. Obviously, these passwords would not be clear text. They would be encoded. They would be encrypted, right? We would have to encrypt the password that is being passed over to us, right? And compare it against the password that has been already encrypted, right? If they match, then it is that user, right? But we're not doing encryption here. We're keeping it. We have username. Here's another password. The password parameter. That's going to do a password here and password here, and add both parameters. And it's going to execute. If it does find it, it's going to read it in. It's going to read and create a developer and return that developer or return null. Yes? All right. So from login, in the login, when they click on the login button, what we're going to do is we're going to retrieve the username and password and see if that username and password exists in the database, right? Using the DAO we just created. Yes? Right? So I'm going to need the DAO here as well in this code behind, right? So let's create developer DAO. Here, so here's the DAO, new developer DAO, right? And in my login, I'm going to grab the username from the login username. Oops. Username.text, right? And read the password as well. All right, so login password.text. Now we have the username and password, right? So we're going to use the DAO to find the developer to see if it's there. Using DAO.find by username and password. There it is. We're going to pass the username, and we're going to pass the password. There it is, right? So we're going to check to see, right? If it's null, that means that username and password doesn't exist, right? That user does not exist. If it's not null, that means it does. Right? So we would pass you on to the profile. Yes, right? So let's check for that. We'll say if developer is null, we should inform the user that there's no such username and password. So let's create a label to inform you of that. So ASP : label ID. This will be login error, right? Run it server. Okay, and then here we're going to do is if it is null, then we're going to say login error dot text, right, is equal no such user exists, and we're just going to return. Okay, so let's try that. Right, if I type whatever and say login, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Let me see. Developer, username, password, blah, blah, blah. Do I need to reload this maybe? Reload. Okay, no such user exists, right? And if I refresh, right, and I type Alice, and I type login, oh, no such user exists either. Oh, username and password. I'm sorry, Alice P1. We should first of all blanket erase the text, right? We should, if there are no errors, make sure that it's blank to begin with. See, Alice P1, Okay, so it doesn't say it, but if I say P2, it says no user exists. Okay, so if I say P1, it does exist. Okay, so it looks like it's working. Notice that I did not make this to be a password. You can change it to be a password. Yes, so you don't see it. All right, so if it's not null, that means you do exist, right? So we have a developer. I'm gonna, just like I did in the registration, I'm gonna put that developer in the session, right? So session, what is it? Logged in developer is equal the developer, and we're going to send you to the profile. Yes, so we're going to say response dot redirect to the profile.aspx. Okay, so if it is P1 and I do log in, it takes me to the profile. Everybody okay? Yes. In the profile, I might want things such as a so I think we're done with these. We're done with registration. We're done with login. In the profile, where's my profile page? Here's my profile page. I might want to be able to log out. Again, this is a very simple log out. The only thing we're going to do is that we're going to have a link here back to login. ASPX, right? Log out. It's just going to bring me back to log in, right? So for instance, if I go here, there's log out. Maybe we want to bring it to the right-hand side, right? So class whole right. There it is. If I click on log out, it just brings me back to the login page, right? I'm sorry? Yeah, you should clear the session. If you're going to clear the session, then it can't be a link, right? It has to be a button again, or something that invokes backend, right? Backend middle tier, right? A code behind where you clear the session, right? And everything goes away, right? Okay. Again, this is a trivial logout, right? Okay, so in here we're gonna display all the information about a profile, right? We have what? We have ASP text box. We might have the ID will be the profile username, right? On a server, and we're gonna have several of these, right? We're gonna have the user, the profile, the password. We'll say profile password. We'll allow you to change the password right here. Password. Oops. We'll allow you to type this again. Profile password 2. So you can change it. I guess you can change your first name too. First name and profile last name. Okay. Right. Maybe a couple placeholders. I'm not going to put them. Right. And I could have maybe 2 buttons, right? Maybe I could have a button that allows me to update the update everything, maybe the first name, last name, but not the password. And maybe a dedicated button that allows me to just change the password. Okay, so let's create a button here that changes that updates my profile, right? Presumably I can only change my first name and last name. Oh, my email. So profile email. How's that? Okay. All right. So here I have a button, and ID is equal to, we'll call it the update. We'll call it profile update button, right? And this is run at server, and I'm going to do an event handler. Well, I'm going to have the text for this. I'll call it update, and the CSS for this will be button primary and button block. Okay, and I'm going to do an on click. If they click on this, I've hit, that's the event handler. Event handler, notice that it added over here, right? You have to make sure to save it. Right? So let's do an F5. There it is. We didn't add any CSS to this, right? But let's do that real quick. This would be CSS form control, and let's just add this to all these. Okay, there they are. So presumably that's the username. Okay, so we want to populate this with the data, with our data. Yes, except the password, perhaps. We don't want to populate the password, right? So let's do that. Where will we do that? Well, we'll do that in the page load, right? When the page first load, I want to grab that user, right? Where is the user? I already have it in the session, right? Although I could go get it in the database, right? Because I have the username. I could go fetch it, but it's already in the session. Let me fetch that from the session. So developer is from, I have it in the session. What is it? Logged in developer, right? And we need to cast it because it stores as generic objects. We need to cast it to develop if I can type developer, there it is, right? And then we can populate those fields one at a time. So we can say profile username dot text is equal to developers dot username, right? Let's try that. Let's see if that works. There it is. Alice is there, right? Let's populate all the other ones. Profile. We want not the password. We're not going to populate the password. We'll populate the email. Well, we don't have an email, right? Profile email. Wait, did I misspell it? Profile email dot text is equal to developer. Wait, did I spell developers? I said developers. Email, and then profile first name dot text equal developers dot first name, and finally we have here last name text is developers last name. Okay, and I don't have values for any of those. We do have passwords, but I would like to be able to update it. So I'd like to be able to type here the username and the first name, email, and whatnot over here, and then click on update, and it updates to the database, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. For that, we're going to need in the data access object, we're going to need an update command, right? So let's for that, I'm going to copy here. I'm going to grab this over here. Create developer. Yeah, because the username, password, email, first name, last name are going to be passed as arguments, right? So I'm going to copy my create method. I'm going to copy my create method, right? And I'm going to rename it. Instead of create, I'm going to call it update. Update developer. And the update developer is going to you need to be able to tell me which developer are you updating, right? Because these are existing records. To be able to tell me who you want to be updating, I'll pass the username of the developer I am updating, right? Although presumably the username is already in the developer object, right? But it's usually a good practice to explicitly pass the primary key by which you are identifying the record that you're updating. Okay, so username is our primary key. You have the connection. The SQL would be update developer, and then set username. Well, no, we're not changing the username, right? We're not changing the username. We're not changing the password. We might change the email, right? So we say set email to email, comma, first name to first name, comma, last name to last name, right? Where username equal username. Correct? Right? We have the command. Notice that we have the parameters already, most of them. We have the username. We're not going to use the password. We're going to update email, first name, okay, we have all those. Okay, we have those written already. And we execute a non-query and we close. Right? All right, so when do we call that? We call that when we click on the update button, right? We click on the update button. So we have to create an instance of the developer with the new data, right, with the new data. So let's grab that. Wait, can I rename this? Developer. So let's create a developer. I'm gonna copy this from here. So because we have to build this, right? So we're gonna have username is equal to that, right? Let's see what else. Email equal to that. First name equal to that. And last name equal to that. And these are all strings, right? String, 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 string. All right, so we read all the data from the input boxes, right? And we're going to instantiate the developer from these values. So we're going to say here's the developer, new developer. That takes as argument the username, the password. We don't have a password. We're not gonna provide it anyway, right? Because we're not gonna allow it to change the password. So that's fine if we just say blank. We're not gonna use it anyway. We do have an email. We do have a first name. We do have a last name. Okay, and we need the DAO. Do we have a DAO in here? We don't have a DAO here, right? In the profile. So let's create a DAO over here. Developer DAO. There it is. DAO equal new developer DAO. We probably might want to consider making a singleton out of that data access object. Actually, no. All right, so DAO dot update developer. Accept the password, right? It is updating everything except username and password, right? Username by policy, we don't allow people to change their username, and password, we prefer to have a dedicated update for that. Okay. So we have update developer, and we're going to pass the username as the keyword of as the primary key and the new developer instance, right? And so that's going to update it. Presumably, it's going to stay in the same page. We're not going to go anywhere. We're going to update it and stay in the same page. So let's try that. I believe this is the email. I think that's the first name. That's the last name. I'm going to click on update, and it died. Developer null reference object. Oh, I don't have a session. Oh, maybe my session died. Let me log in again, making sure. Log in, Alice. Update. Okay. I don't think that worked. Let's go to our database. Let's see if it changed for Alice. I say show data. Alice. Okay. First name, last name, and email did not work. Right. I believe what's happening. Okay, is that the page is being reloaded. Right, the page is being reloaded, and it's being reset to data that is blank. It's already it's blank to start with, right? And then the button handles and says, okay, they're blank, right? Look at this. If we step through this, right? And let's run login. Let's run login page. Here's the login page, and let's run it. Okay, and we say Alice in P1. If I go here into my profile ASPX, right, and I go into my page load, right? If I log in, I drop into the page load. See that? And I'm in the page load, right? I'm gonna go fetch it from the session. I fetch it from the session. And then notice that I have a username. I do not have an email because it's blank, right? From the database, it's blank. First name is blank, last name is blank, right? That makes sense. Let's continue. Okay, we're here. Now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to update here Alice for the email, first and last. I'm going to say update. notice that it's page load who gets called first. See that? It is page load who gets called first before the event handler. Okay, and by this time, notice that again the username is still Alice, but email is still blank from the session. You see that? So the session is clearing out the text boxes before I even get a chance to read from it. Right? Now, if I do a continue, now it goes to the event handler. It says, okay, what is it from the text boxes? Oh, well, they've been blanked out, right? All the data that you typed is gone, right? So from the username, if I read from it, I do have the username because it was already there, it wasn't blank. But all of these, email is blank, first name is blank, right? First name is blank. All right, so what's happening here is that I need to be able to distinguish between the page when it first loads the very first time, right? Or when I am interacting with the page and it's not the first time, right? I'm just interacting with it, right? I'm passing data, you know, process data, do things with it, and then just re-show it to me, right? So I need to be able to distinguish between those two states, okay? Okay, so what .NET does is that it provides a flag, right, that allows you to say, is this the first time, or is this just a post back? You know, are you posting back the page a second time, right? So what we want to be able to do is, if this is not a post back, meaning this is the very first time, right? This is not is post back, right? Post back is a Boolean flag that tells me, right? This is you interacting with the page. This is not the very first time, right? If this is not, meaning this is the very first time that we're coming in here, yes, I want to do all this, right? I want to read all this information from the database, you know, update all my fields from the database, right? With the data that is already there. But next time, when you submit and you're still on the same page, this is not a first load, so I don't want to do this again, right? I don't want to blank and go to the database and fetch it, right? I'm just interacting with the page, right? All right, so let's go back here, and so this is the very first time that it loads. There it is. It loaded from the database. That is the first time. But now that I'm going to go here and do Alice at email.com, and this is Alice, this is Wonderland, right? And I do an update, and notice that it stayed here, right? It's loading it, right? Now, if I go to a database, and I stop this and I go to the database and ask for the data for this, hopefully we don't have. Let's refresh. There it is. There's first name, last name, and email there. Okay. So yeah, so we have successfully added this. There's one problem though. There is one problem in that I updated the database, but my session has the old version of the developer. See, right? Has the old version of the developer. So page load. Right. So my local copy of my developer in the session is dirty. Right. It's no longer. So what I could do, what I could possibly do, since I have a developer here that I just instantiated, right? I could update it. I could update the session with this new version, right, of the user. Right. This is the logged in. What is it? Logged in developer. Developer with this developer instance, right? Which has my first name, my last name, right? My email is now there, right? It's stored there correctly. Okay. Right. The password will be similar. Let's not do the password. Right, let's do something else. I have 11 minutes. So users would like to create applications, right? Developers like to create applications. So presumably, you know, we want to go into a page that would allow us to add or create applications for a developer. Yes. So let's create a page here that lists all the applications that a developer has made. Right, so let's create here applications, okay, and here I'm going to copy the bootstrap, and I'm going to paste it here, And this is an application list. So here I'm going to have a class container and h1 application list, right? Let's see. So in my profile, one of the things that I might have, which you should have in your projects, right? You might have links, right, or lists of things. Yes, you might have lists of people you're following. You have lists of things you have bookmarked, right? Articles you have liked, articles that you have reviewed on, right? So there's a one-to-many relationship between you and several other things. Yes. Well, here what I'm going to do is going to have a link. I'm going to have a link here, href that goes to my applications, right? Applications, there it is. Applications. I'm gonna render this as a button. So I'm gonna say class button warning, okay, and do button block. Right. So if I refresh this, there's my applications. Why didn't it load it? Let's see. Applications. Go to application list. Okay. All right. I can look at that later. There's my applications. My applications. So in my applications, what I would like to be able to do is, well, obviously each one of these should have a back button, right? Notice I did not put a back button in the profile, but actually no, the profile has no back button, right? Where would it go, right? So yeah, so profile is kind of like a route from where you can navigate elsewhere, but you can't go anywhere. Well, actually, you could have at the top, not only log out, you can have like a home page, right, where you can go into a common area of all developers or all users, perhaps, right? But applications, this one should have a back button, right? But I'm not gonna add it for time's sake. What the application page should have, right, is a means for me to add applications, right? Or this is similar to, if this is a post, I like to post new articles, right? I want to create new content, but my content is applications. Yes. So I'm going to have here a button that will allow me to navigate to a page that allows me to enter information about that application. Yes. Like if I'm creating a post, it allows me to enter the title and things like that, right? So I'm going to navigate here to application new or application new ASPX. All right, so I'm going to say add, and this is going to be a class button, and this is button success. Right, there it is, add, and I'm going to push it to the right, right, so that it's all the way to the right hand side, almost like a a header on a phone, right? That you would click on add, and then it would give you a page for you to add an application, right? All right, so so let's create that application new page, and the application new page, add web form. I'm going to copy the bootstrap into application new. Right, and this is the div is the class container, and I'm going to put here h1 new application, right? And a new application might have a name, right? If this is an application that can connect to a URL and interact with the URL, maybe it has a URL, maybe it has a genre, right? If it's a game or it's whatever, right? Might have different things. Actually, we'll need a table for that, right? So let's create a table. Let's create a table in our database here. So here's developer, and I'll create new add new table, and in my table I'm going to call my table application, and there's my primary key. I don't want to have to deal with coming up with these IDs, unique identifiers, so I'm going to invoke my identity, right? Identity, and that will automatically increment my ID every time I insert. Other things that I might want in here are, the name of my application. I'll use a varchar for that. Maybe it's a URL, maybe varchar. Maybe the genre, varchar. And also, I like to know, well, who built this, right? Who's the owner of this? So I like to have this like a foreign key back to the username who created this, right? So I'm going to have here username or developer username, also a varchar, right? But this varchar is going to be a reference, right? This is going to be a foreign key. This is going to be a foreign key that references developer username. Yep. Okay. I'm going to update this, save the database, and so what I want to be able to do is that when I create in my application new, I would like to have all this information, right, for that table. What do I have here? Let's refresh this. So here's the application. So I need all these fields here, right? So again, I have ASP, text box, and I'll have here ID. I'll have new app name, right? New app name. This is run at server, and CSS class is form control, right? And I have several of these. How many fields do I have? Let's see. I have the name, the URL, the genre, the developer username. That should be added automatically, right? Since I know who's logged in, right? That person is the developer, right? I should not have to type it. Okay. What else? So new application name. We have new app URL, and this is new app genre, and I'll add it here, but I don't want to have to. I don't want to have it provided, right? So I'll hide this, right? It'll be there, but it'll be hidden. So I'll have a new app developer username, okay? And instead of a text box, I'll make it hidden field, okay? Meaning it will be there, right? But it just will be hidden. Right? And then a button that allows me to actually create this, right? So this is ID equal new app add button. Yes, and this will be CSS, will be a button, and a button primary, and it will be at the bottom of the page, so it'll take up the entire block, right? What else? The text. The text is going to be create or add, right? Let's see. We go to add. Let's see. What is it complaining about? Hidden field. A hidden field. Blah 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 blah. Oh, there's no CSS on a hidden field, right? Makes no sense. So a hidden field. Let me remove the class. There it is. New application. And here will be some placeholder, right? And this will be the name, this will be the URL, and this will be the genre. Yes? And then the button, for some reason, it did not. Why didn't the button render? What's it complaining about? Element ASP is missing require after run it. Run it figures. There it is. Add, right? So I will click on add, and this will add a new list, a new application to my list. Okay. So guess what? I'm going to use the same pattern, right? In my DAO, right? In my DAO, I'm going to create what? I'm going to create first a class to keep track of my application. Here's the application. And the application has what? It has the ID, public int ID, with set and get, right? It have public string name, set and get, right? And then has public string URL, set and get, and then public string genre, set and get, right? And then the public string developer username, set and get. Okay, and then constructor for this, right? I didn't add the constructor, and I would also have a DAO here, right? I would have a DAO for that particular data type, for that particular entity type, right? And it's a class, another class, add class application DAO, which will have the same thing as the very similar to the developer DAO, right? It will have a connection string. Actually, it's the same connection string, right? Perhaps it's global, and it'll have a create, public void create application that takes as argument an application and creates the command line and all the commands, the parameters, and whatnot that come through here. Unfortunately, my time has run out. We'll keep playing with this next week, but it'll give me a chance to introduce entity framework, right, and a real login utility. Okay, right. All right. Thank you.